Welcome, Faxt viewers. We're with Mike Winkelmann. We just coming right off the heels of a great panel you did at the Bass Museum with you, Adam Lindeman and Peter Saul. And thank you to the Bass for letting us film here. So two kind of things in one day. I'm going to try to channel my inner Jimmy Fallon. Maybe send Jimmy the tape and show him how it really should be done.
Oh, Jimmy, you son of a bitch. You did me dirty. You did me dirty.
You were great on Jimmy. It was like...
No, it was super fun. Like, it's definitely fun. But I think I was super excited to talk to you because we had talked sort of briefly before, and like, obviously you've been, you know, around the industry for a second here and sort of like have a very different sort of perspective that I have that, you know, is definitely, I find super fascinating because honestly, I think a lot of artists are very sort of hesitant to talk about the like money aspect or market aspect of it, but to me it's just like, it doesn't bother me. It's like interesting, but you know, I think it's cool to be able to sort of like see it from both sides.
Well, we'll come to the money aspect of it
well,
last,
yeah, I mean.
But it's like, I bring up Fallon because there's this sense of community that you've built for 20 years around your work as a digital artist, and we tend to put things in these sort of silos. And you were in that silo, and now you've been, you know, you're looking at what you call the art world with capital A, that's another silo, and there's pop culture silo. It's like, how do you feel that sense of community? What is your community? How do you relate to community?
Yeah, I think, you know, the digital art community is something that I've definitely been a part of for the last sort of, I wouldn't say the whole time, I would say probably the last 10 years, just because prior to sort of like social media, it was much more kind of disjointed and sort of like harder to sort of like get people organized and sort of like have like, you know, kind of like true events and stuff. But yeah, it's something that I think is really important, and something that I think people don't maybe understand as much about my story is that is sort of what put me in the position to have this sort of thing happen. The mix of sort of the community that I had sort of like built up and the sort of like following that I built up over the last, 20 years, and then sort of this new technology that was sort of the like fuse that lit the powder keg here.
Does that community want to go along for the ride that you're taking them into these other communities, or do they want to stay in their dorkiness kind of domeness? I think you use that word.
No, almost everybody from the digital art community came along for the NFT ride. Quite a lot of them, and that's what I saw is when I first learned of NFTs. It was like, wait a second, all this shit that nobody was paying any money for before, now they're paying money. All of the digital artists are going to come to this. Like, they're all like coming. So I knew there was about to be like a huge influx of people coming to this from like my old world.
But it made me think in the beginning, in March, first time I'm hearing the word NFTs, and you read about all this disruption. I'm thinking they want to disrupt, but they're desperate to do what you did, which was sell directly at Christie's, which is actually the least disruptive kind of thing. So which is it? Is it disruption? I'm not saying so much for you. You've made your choice and been clear, or is it non-disruptive?
I don't think it's as disruptive as people think. I think you're going to see this just be another way that sort of people kind of make a living. And I think it's, if you are sort of, because it takes a certain type of artist, and I think there's certain artists who don't really want to market themselves. They don't really give a shit about social media. They don't want to fuck with any of that. They want to just paint stuff, and like that's what they enjoy doing. They need a gallery. They need somebody to sort of like have that infrastructure around them to kind of like. Because
their job isn't to make the art necessarily, to be the one to articulate it. Not everybody has to have the Damien Hirst or the Beeple playbook.
Honestly, to me, it doesn't bother me, and I find enjoyment in sort of like doing these things and sort of like. I see the marketing that I do in terms of social media as like an extension of the art. It's just another thing that it's like, okay, well, I need to explain to people this or that is happening or whatever, that I'm selling this or that, and like putting time into like, you know, looking at the teaser videos or like things that I'm making at it as their own sort of like little art pieces, like making it like a little short film like type thing. to me is really fun and just another extension of the like whole project. But yeah, a lot of people, they don't give a fuck about that. They don't find that part of it to be artistic, and so they just don't give a shit about it. And then you do need like that. And so that's where I think these things are not gonna go away. And like a lot of the things that this technology provides are, it's again just another sort of like canvas that I think is not so different than sort of like any other sort of new art form that wasn't art and then kind of became art.
Well, where I think you're a little bit rare is your interest in being able to deal with people and technology. You talked about studying computer science. I actually have a master's in computer science.
Are you serious? That's
from
funny.
The 70s, and everybody
That's
that
funny.
I
Like
went
4chan shit you were
yeah,
doing?
4chan and stuff like that. And
That's
in the
funny.
70s, and all my other classmates were like carrying their slide rules, and they wouldn't talk to people.
Yeah.
And I'm in middle of Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, a New York City kid from
nice,
the art
dude.
world.
That's nice. That's a
and
good school, too.
It freaked me out. It's top 5 school in this, and I did poorly. It freaked me out because these people don't like want to deal with people.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward, and now you have all this wealth in Silicon Valley, and most of those people are doing that stuff because they don't want to deal with human beings. And the art is a little
I don't
bit.
know about that. That might be a little.
Well, you come out of that in that history, and you're a little bit rare because you're quite charming, and you like to like interact with
Yeah.
humans.
No, I really do. Like, I enjoy it. Like, and like coming out to these things and, you know, meeting people and signing crap. And like, even that stuff is like fun. Like, people started, you know, sort of bringing up dollar bills. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to draw designs on this dollar bill. It's like, I think, to me, again, I sort of just view it as like an extension of any of these other things that I'm doing. And like finding like fun ways to sort of like interact with people, I really enjoy. But yeah, it's definitely, again, going to computer science, you know, school for that. I definitely understand that that's pretty rare in sort of like this field.
And now you've leapfrogged into this position in the art world with a capital A. In your short time there, what have you learned that surprised you?
That's I feel like I'm pretty often surprised. I feel like that
give us
is
some examples,
no shortage of surprises on a daily basis. It's the whole thing is still like very surreal to me still. Like the entire thing, like literally saying out loud that like I sold a piece for that amount of money is like so bizarre to me still, and just feels like very, very surreal, because it just to me really came out of nowhere. And it was like this wasn't like one day, you know, this will be available and people will look at this as like, I just did not see this coming. So
Well, it must be weird. It's like, as you look at art, you know, $30 million for a sculpture, I'll call it human one a sculpture, or video sculpture, or certainly an artwork, that's like, well, who sold sculpture for that? Like Brancusi, Matisse, Modigliani, Beeple. I mean, that's got to be like a, you know, like the kind of thing you thought about maybe when you're 8 in your bedroom.
Yeah, no, that's
what's
it's insane too. And what I think is actually probably kind of is a blessing in disguise in some respects is that I didn't go to art school and I don't know a lot of these things, so I'm not maybe as daunted by some of this stuff as I should be, because I'm too stupid to know like how like insane this is. I'm learning more, you know, definitely have learned a lot about art history.
Give us a little bit of what you've been learning since this year and how you've gone about learning. Maybe just even the process, like we're in Miami, the art fair. I think you went to your first fair in New York and Freeze or something.
Yep.
6 months ago now, you're an art fair pro. It's like, what,
Yeah, not an art
you've
fair
been
pro.
two?
I've got 2. I would say super pro, but that's fine if you want to be insulting. No, it's definitely. Honestly, I've learned so much in so many different areas, because again, like art-wise, I knew very little of art history, and embarrassingly little, because I literally have not taken an art class since high school. And so
I didn't take art classes either, so we're even there. We're the same age.
Yeah. So
So you're learning about art, and the
learning
history
a
of
ton
art.
of like the history
Are
of
you
art.
reading books, going to museums,
It's
looking at
honestly
shows?
mostly through
Like digital.
no, and like conversations with people. Okay. Like I've got, you know, sort of a number of like people who are very knowledgeable in the space and sort of like have been very generous with their time to sort of like help, and very patient too, to explain my, you know, sometimes laughable questions.
And you've been collecting art. Your brother's here. I know we
That's
talked
true.
about
He's a big collector.
About
He's a
his
major
collecting,
collector.
You know, have you been collecting art?
I have not collected. I've collected a few NFTs. Honestly, very few. But it's something that I'm excited to sort of like get into more. It's just I will have like some level of collection, but it's not going to be this like massive collection, to be quite honest. I would guess, because to be quite honest, like I never collected anything before this. Like it wasn't like growing up, oh, I collected baseball cards or comics. Like I just like that mindset.
And I think you're right that most of the collectors I know, as kids say, stamps, coins.
Never. I never had anything like that.
Then you're
None
unlikely to do that.
It's just, I don't have that mindset. I'm so focused on like
making it and
making things that it's sort of like that sort of like idea and that sort of like deriving pleasure from like, you know, building a collection. Like it's just, that's not how I'm like wired. But it's so cool to see people like, you know, going through like the Rebel Museum, like, and being able to appreciate, like I very much appreciate other people's like collections and the time and effort and sort of like thought that went into like building them, especially when they're like displayed like that, is, you know.
But
really,
have you leaned into the difference of like seeing a Rothko on a computer screen versus a Rothko in real life?
Oh, to me, yeah.
And that's a, you know, where we need to really be as a community of like understanding that those are fundamentally different.
To me, they're very, very different. Although I don't know that future generations will share that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But to me, those are very, very different things. Because purely just mathematically, one is something that I can do anytime. And so it is not a scarce experience. Versus if I'm standing 2 feet from a $100 million, whatever, $50 million painting, well, that's not something I can do anytime. That is a very rare experience. And so I approach it very differently, and it like has a very different sort of like emotional like
well, you can't
impact.
Get the sublime off a computer screen.
Well, there's so many, like, that's the thing that's with physical sort of things like that. There's actually an infinite amount of detail. The closer and closer you sort of like look, versus there's a very finite amount of detail when it's on a computer screen. What is the resolution of the file? That's it. You can't just.
And as you go into object making of your own work, having made one, at least that we've seen.
So that's the other thing is I think a lot of people who, you know, saw Human One are sort of under the impression that it is the first thing, but I've actually released a bunch of physical artwork with stuff dating all the way back to a year ago. And they were very sort of like smaller like screens, very sort of like much simpler than sort of the Human One thing. But that's something that honestly for the last year has been like one of the like biggest focuses and things that I'm, you know, very excited about.
What should our art world understand about you that they don't know? Here's a chance you're speaking to them. They're watching. The director of the Met, you know, museum curators, dealers, other artists, collectors. This is like your chance in a sense to speak to them in a more direct way without like only about the money and the press and all that.
Yeah, I think as people sort of like come to know, I can't think of any sort of like one thing. I think honestly as people sort of like come to sort of like know me and sort of like look at sort of the work that I've done over the last kind of like 20 years, I think they will come to see that this art and the art that other people in sort of the digital art community are making is honestly no different than like any other sort of like medium, and that it's just like another thing. And I think they're also going to see that it's going to bring in a new class of collectors that like everybody wins then when more people are interested in buying stuff. Because again, you see Justin Sun buys a Picasso, buys a Giacometti, like he'd never collected any art before, and so you're gonna see some like spillover like that too. And so
it's interesting because we interviewed him. He reached out to us, wanting to like,
and that's the other thing I
and
think
wanting to have his voice heard. And I thought, wow, well that's like a new kind of thing. And in a sense, you're leaning into this world.
I think what you will also find with these collectors is, I think you will be very surprised at how they are good shepherds of this work. The person who bought Reinzer, who bought Human One, like he is very excited about sort of like, you know, working with museums to set up sort of like, you know, and really kind of give this the sort of, you know, recognition and sort of attention that, you know, he feels it deserves. And so I think you're going to find that people collectors coming from the digital world are really like, have a real sort of like reverence for this work and sort of really want to see it.
But it's not a democracy, it's a patronage and a sort of like an elite, either by wealth or by access. It's not like we're all crowdfunding this thing kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you will see, and again, there's obviously people who are, you know, just in it to make a quick buck in the traditional world, just as much in the like digital world. But I think you are going to see, especially at the sort of, let's say, higher end of the market, you're going to see people who are very sort of like thoughtful about this stuff and do really want to be good sort of stewards of the like artwork.
So isn't that financial craziness kind of antithetical to that ascent? Because 99% of the talk about NFTs is about the money. In the same way, the, you know, black abstraction that's dominating the market is about the money, or these, you know, black figurative artists is really about the market. I'm not saying it's narrow to NFT, but it's like all those things, crypto, sneaker, NFT, the art world. Isn't that, you know, a flashpoint?
I feel like people like to sometimes pretend like they don't want to talk about the money, but then there's a lot of it. It's like, okay, guys, let's be fucking honest. Like, the only reason you're talking to me is because I sold this thing for a shitload of money. Like, that's the only reason I'm on a lot of people's radar. But they want to act like it's like, guys, so we can't talk about the money.
You
like,
mean the art dealers who are like the 500 art dealers are coming to? It's like, we're so pure.
I think
we're about the culture aesthetic, but they want.
And I think a lot of people, like, from all aspects of this, and I think it's sort of like, I don't know, to me that, again, it doesn't really sort of like bother me, or like, I don't see it as sort of, I'm able to, I think, very much compartmentalize the art and the money. The money is whatever the fucking money is the market. I can't control the market, and it is gonna be what it is. But like, I know I'm not making the art for the market, so the market is just gonna be what it is.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm making that art because that's what I wanna say, and I'm not gonna let that like be influenced by the money, especially now. And
Well,
so
if only bad artists made money, that'd be a problem. And if no great artist could make money, but you have all four quadrants working. Great artists making money, great artists not, bad artists not making money, even though Jerry Saltz would like them all to be paid, and bad artists, some who do. All those things are simultaneous, but it's this focus on this thing that's a little bit overwhelming in our culture.
And that's the thing where, again, I feel lucky that I was, for 20 years, that was no part of what I was doing. It was literally, I did not have to worry that somebody was going to collect this. Do they want to buy this? That was not anything that I focused on at all, because there was no collecting of this work. And so it was just like, I'm just gonna say whatever the fuck I wanna say, and like, that's it. And like, hopefully people like it, but if they don't like it, whatever, it doesn't fucking matter.
Well,
I'm still gonna be able to like put food on the
You're
table.
a completely different overnight sensation. I was talking to an artist who's become quite successful, it's about your age, early 40s, something like that.
Yeah.
And they've been painting for 20 years. So they really had an overnight success, but 20 years of work. You appear to be an overnight success, but in fact, you've been quite successful on your own for all this time.
Yeah.
It's a different experience.
Yeah, it definitely is different, and I think that's another part of the reason of this like that very much this feels, you know, too good to be true, is because again, I was not a starving artist. Like I was definitely like probably one of the highest paid like designers in the world. And again, because I had sort of amassed this following, I was doing stuff with Apple and Nike and SpaceX and Louis Vuitton and sort of like doing, you know, good, well-paying jobs. And so I felt like I had already gotten the sort of like benefit from doing all this hard work. And then it's like, oh no, extra benefit, bonus mode, like, yeah.
So back to the art world, what would you like to know? You must have some questions. You have
what would I like
to say? You have a question for me? It's
That's
like
true.
That you're entering into this.
I guess my question for you would be, how do you think this is going to change the like sort of like art world and sort of like from the like market side of things?
Well, I think that we make these global assumptions about the big art market. And first of all, each artist has their own market.
Very
and
true.
They don't move in the same direction, and Japanese calligraphy does not go up because black abstraction went down. They move in different ways. So that's one point that I would stress to you. The other is it takes so few people to make the appearance of like, you know, $69 million could have been two if three people had just said, yeah, that's as far as I go, and we wouldn't be having all that. That's like three, maybe there were 10, but you know, it's so few people.
Very few.
Make this media sensation.
Which
and
is
if one of
crazy.
them had COVID that day,
Exactly.
and another one really didn't like that, so we draw these conclusions. So the trick is like 30 years ago, as a dealer or somebody in the art world, I knew all the collectors in the world, either personally, heard of them all. No one does anymore. And Justin is a good example. Suddenly he went from crypto to Warhol, Picasso, Giacometti for $70 million. He's a dream come true for the art business. It's like, here's a new soccer. You know, here's
a new soccer. Wow. Okay, heard it for Bear Faxt.
You play poker? I say this all the time. Do you play poker?
Not well, but very, very
well. If you're in a poker game, you don't know who the mark is.
You're the mark.
You're the mark. So the art world is looking at these guys saying, okay.
Well, I have a feeling
here we go. Come into here's the velvet rope. Here's some pretty girls. It's a nice food. We're on the boat in Venice with this one. Get on my jet. It's fun. The art world's fun.
Yeah, no.
You know, it's a lot more fun than the computer screen.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more where that came from. To be quite honest, I feel like we are very, very early in activating the amount of collectors who never thought of themselves in that way, and they've made a couple bucks in the tech sphere. And so I think you are going to see a huge continuation of that. And
20 years ago, no tech CEO collected art, probably, maybe Larry Ellison. Okay, and those that did, people looked at them like they were stupid and crazy. And now, if you're like a CEO and you don't collect art, they look at you like you're crazy. Yeah. You know, it's like, and their wife are like, but I need a Chris Wall on my wall. And the guy goes, who? And it's like their entry point is $12 million. That's changed, and it's, you know, the art world is like.
I think you're going to see it, though, at even a much lower level, too. Because, again, even if you're just somebody who works at Facebook or Google or one of those things, you're making pretty good money. Like, it's one of these things.
What about fractional ownership of art? What do you think of that?
I think it's something that's interesting. I think it very much is the devil is in the details. And I think it can be done good, and I think it can be done poorly, but I think it's something that is a really interesting concept, and I think it's something that you're going to see, you know, sort of more of. And I think the people who are doing it in a way that is in service of the artwork and trying to steward that artwork and sort of add context and add exposure to it, I think that is very good, and I think those are going to be successful. I think the things that are, you know, sort of just short-term bullshit, cash grab things, just smash it into a million pieces and hope the pieces are worth more than the Humpty Dumpty of all put together.
Well,
That shit, I think, is.
What did you make of that
gonna-
attempt? Was it last week or 2 weeks ago for the attempt to buy
The Constitution
the
down.
Constitution, and they raised $43 million.
It was like 3 days or something.
And when
too.
they didn't buy it, they couldn't really give people their money back. They hadn't thought through the details of like
Oh, I thought they did. I haven't followed it that
the
closely.
transaction costs of giving their money back eats up something like 70% of all the gas and the charges.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
so when
right.
they
The
went
gas
to-
fees.
The gas fees were killing all these people that they couldn't get their money back. And so there's $30 million or so that's disappearing into somebody's pocket
Oh,
for
shit.
doing that. And it was just that they didn't think through all the steps. Like, what happens if we don't get it?
That's honestly, I knew they had started giving some of it back, but I didn't think about the gas fees, because what I didn't realize with that is, until like afterwards, is, correct me if I'm wrong, but they raised that from like 20,000 people. It was like a huge number of people. There wasn't like 6 people.
Yes,
pulled
that's
their
why
money.
the $75 charge each way. If you
Yes,
gave,
that makes
if you
sense.
gave $200,
Yeah.
it cost you 75
Yes.
in gas fees
Yes.
going in and $75 in gas fees going out. Now you're left with 50.
Yeah. And
And-
nothing happened. You didn't get anything.
Now they're like, yeah.
Wow.
So it's
Yeah,
a
there's-
cluster F.
Yeah, I do not doubt
But
that.
could you see that happening to like a work of yours if you put it out there, or something, and encouraged your, public, your community to like, let's all buy the next one, and they raise the money to do it? I could see that happening to you.
Yeah, it could 100%, and that's where I think people are moving in this space very quickly. And to be quite honest, that's not really an isolated incident of some big thing getting fucked up like that, because everybody's moving so fucking quickly that it's like the fucking gold rush. I gotta get in there and get my NFT, blah blah blah, and it's like, chill, guys. This is not fucking going anywhere. And thinking through shit like that, that's how the space is going to mature and really sort of add more sort of real value to sort of like.
Well,
the
you
greater
have
sort
this
of art.
responsibility in a sense of being the most public person and the one associated with so much money, of saying, slow down, guys, or.
They don't want to hear that. I can tell you that. That's not a super popular opinion in the NFT space, telling people to sort of slow down. And I get it. It's exciting. I'm excited by it too. We're running pretty quick too. And so I totally get that. But I think, especially when you're dealing with other people's money, you want to kind of slow down.
Well, and the other
Slow
thing
down.
that you've done that I don't know if it's getting enough attention is the philanthropic opportunity for you. If the art world, one thing it can be great at, particularly our readers and things that I'm involved with, my charity work, is the art world can be really philanthropic.
Yeah, that's definitely something. We did a sort of drop in, I think it was May, and we raised $6 million for Open Earth. And that's something that next year we're going to be sort of really, really kind of focusing on. Because to be quite honest, that to me is actually way more sort of fun, and feels like not having to sort of sell it for me. I just am very much looking forward to that, and sort of obviously there's no shortage of great causes out there, so there will be a lot more of that.
Yeah, so whether you're driving a Mercedes or Ferrari, it's not that important. I mean, no car and being poor sucks. But, whether you're an Aston Martin or an old 3-year-old Mercedes is one thing, but the chance to actually do good, because wouldn't you say your work is quite a bit about social and political things?
There is a lot of pieces, and sort of those are things that I said to sort of, sometimes raise questions, but sometimes bring awareness to things that have happened or things that I feel sort of strongly about. And so being able to now be in a position where I could, not only say the thing, but then have somebody else pay to actually make a change in that thing. I feel super, super fortunate, and that to me is really exciting.
Now, haven't you also, I don't know the extent you want to talk about this or want to use it, you've sort of also been, woke cultures come after you a little bit too.
And it's one of these things where I totally get that the pictures it's not lost on me that people could be offended by these pictures, 100%. Like, and I think what I would say to that is that's really never my intention. It is always my intention that you look at this picture and it brightens your day. I'm never out there, oh, this is gonna piss people off. I don't want to piss people off. Why would I want to piss people off? I want everybody to like every picture. And so, like, I totally get that. And so I think, that's my intention. But at the same time, I also want to say what I want to say. And so I know people could get offended by it. And so to me, it's sort of like, I'm not trying to, but I'm also not going to sort of like hold my tongue with the way that I speak. I mean, to be quite honest, just even like swearing, a lot of people like, I don't like that. I literally just got bitched at by some fucking dude at a restaurant like 2 days ago. He's literally, we're sitting there and said, would you talk that way in front of your mother? I'm just like, Jesus, guy, like, and so, but this is just how I talk. Like, I'm not trying to offend anybody. This is just like how I talk. And so the art is very similar to that. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I do want to say, like, and I think everybody else should be able to say what they want to say.
But I wanted to address that because it is like something out there, and we're talking, all these great things in philanthropy and money and all that, that is something that...
Yeah, 100%.
Did it surprise you?
It did surprise me, but then it's sort of like, there's things that I've sort of like legitimately, very old work that it's sort of like I look at it now and it doesn't hold up to 2021 and it's sort of a little like cringy and stuff. But to me, the whole thing, like the entire sort of like everydays, which I think was kind of like lost on people, it really is about a journey. And it is about like each day getting better and like just incrementally sort of like improving. And so I feel like my messaging and sort of like how I sort of like portray art, even back then I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. I said things in a more like awkward, kludgy way. And I think people interpret that as meaning something that it doesn't. And so I think now I'm able to sort of like articulate the ideas that I'm sort of like putting out there.
Well, that's just a general maturing of things. And it's interesting when you were on the stage with Peter Saul, I mean, that work is deliberately adolescent.
Yeah.
And, I have my issues about adolescence as a, subject matter versus, just becoming more mature. And I'd say your work is probably maturing.
Yeah. I think it's definitely, I feel more capable of sort of like getting across more nuanced messages, certainly than I could in the past. And so, it's exciting to me to sort of continue to be able to sort of, especially now having a bigger sort of platform, be able to sort of speak on things that I care about with a better degree of sort of like accuracy.
So a year from now, where and what will we have seen from you in, I'm going to say, the capital A art world?
I have a gallery show, which is sort of the first kind of like gallery show I've ever done. In March in New York, and then honestly, like a bunch of like charity stuff because we're definitely really excited about that and sort of wanting to do a lot more in that direction. So that's going to be a huge focus. In Charleston, we have like a big space and we're sort of like building out a gallery there that will be sort of more like kind of like a Beeple museum that has like one place where you can, spend an hour and see kind of at least a sort of like glimpse of all the different sort of like style of work.
Your fans are going to want a gift shop. Are you going to make one?
A gift shop? Yeah, I don't know.
They're going to want it. You're going to want not to do it, and they're going to want it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much I like that. I really want it to be a place where it's not about like selling stuff. That it's just literally a place
I'm
to
sure
like
you,
come and like.
And you're right to want that, but they're going to be like, but I want to buy a postcard.
Well, that's the thing. Then they can line up in things and they can bring in a postcard. And
You can get a lookalike
that's true.
to play your role.